Public Works Committee for Thursday, March 31st, 2016. Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Anderpont?
Here.
Mr. Barris?
Here.
Mr. Brain? He is not here. Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Guidry?
Here.
Mr. Guillory?
Here.
Mr. Hunter?
Here.
President Landry?
Here.
Mr. Latour?
Here.
Ms. Mayo? Here. Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mrs. Trimmie? Here. Mr. White?
Here.
And Farnum, Chairman Farnum, excuse me.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Little housekeeping, if you would, silence all electronic devices while we conduct the meeting. We'll move to item 3, appearance by Judge Marilyn Castle, candidate for Louisiana State Supreme Court District 3. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you all so much for allowing me to come to speak to you. I know you have a long agenda. I'm not going to take up a lot of your time. But I do want you to be aware that in November, on the ballot with the president and the senatorial races and the congressional races, is going to be an important race for this area, and that's the race for Louisiana Supreme Court Justice. Our current justice from this district is retiring, and so it will be an open seat. I'm currently a judge in the 15th Judicial District, which is Lafayette, Acadia, and Vermilion parishes. I've been a judge there for a little bit over 17 years, and in my capacity as a district judge there, we don't have a divided bench, so we hear both civil and criminal. We also hear family, so we hear basically the whole spectrum of cases. I'm currently also president of our Louisiana District Judges Association, and I made the decision to seek this seat for Supreme Court because I really care about our justice system and the way we're perceived. I am a firm believer that the courts are a limited branch of our government. We have 3 branches and we have to work together, but we can't step on each other's toes. And I definitely believe that the role of the court is limited to taking what the legislative bodies, such as yourself or the legislature, enacts and applying it to facts and not making a determination of whether we think we could come up with a better law. So I think it's a real bad precedent to have judges who try to get around the law, bend the law, or actually legislate from the bench. I know that probably you all are not familiar with my record as a judge because my district is a few miles away, but I encourage you to talk to anyone who lives in Acadia or Vermilion and Lafayette, and I think they will tell you that I have adhered through my 17 years to that policy of doing what the role of the courts is. One other little thing I want to say, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I think we all know that in Louisiana we have a real problem with the rate of incarceration. Everybody talks about Louisiana has the highest incarceration rate of any state. I have seen it. I was an assistant DA for a few years at the beginning of my career, and I've been a judge now for 17 years, and I've seen it. And we do have a problem, and the problem is not that we should just open the jail and let everybody out. The problem is that we should be smarter with how we handle people once they come into the system. And one of the things I've done as a district judge is, with our Judges Association is I've worked for many years on our Department of Corrections committee. And we have started a lot of programs to try to help people. And my belief is that, the worst thing you can do is sentence somebody and just warehouse them. We have to find ways to change their behavior. And although it may sound expensive, it's a lot less expensive than having people come back through jail over and over again. Less expensive not only in terms of what the taxpayer pays, but in the human lives that are lost when you allow that to happen. So I would love the opportunity to talk to you in more detail. I know you have a lot of time. I have passed out brochures. If any of you are interested, you could go to my website. There's more information about it. My phone number's on there. I would be happy to take phone calls from any of you if you have questions. I have been here in Calcasieu campaigning for about a year, so I've met some of you before. I'll be over here some more. Election is not until November. But I encourage you to look carefully at the records of whatever candidates may seek this seat, to ask questions and to satisfy yourself that they represent your values and what you want to see happen. Remember, we only have 7 people on the Louisiana Supreme Court, which means it takes only 4 justices to make a decision. So it's important that you trust the judgment of the person that you might put in that position, and I hope that you will trust me. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving an active sale agreement for the School Street Extension Project in Ward 1. We have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Guidry. Do we have any discussion? Any objection? Motion by Mr. White. I'm just calling them like I see them on the board.
There you go. Yes.
Look at me.
I did.
Any discussion on that item? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry.
I will say, Mr. White, it's never going to be his fault, so
Look at my
never
phone.
going to be his fault.
I didn't even know where.
I want to get it right.
Item 5, consideration of adopting a resolution approving an active donation agreements for the East Fred Vale Road project in Ward 3.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr.
If
Lambert,
it's okay with Mr. McMillan.
second by Mr. Scott.
Okay.
Have any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion will carry. Item 6, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving an active sale agreement for the River Road Bridge Replacement Project in Ward 8. Motion by Mr. Latour, second by Ms. Mayo. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Item 7, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving an active sale agreement for the Booth Road project in Ward 1. We have a motion by Mr. Latour and a second by Mr. White. Discussion on that item. Objection? Hearing none, motion will carry. Item 8, consideration and making a recommendation with reference to adopting, that's the wrong one. Item 9, already did 8.
Wait. We already did 8.
Already did 8.
No,
Uh,
you haven't yet.
No?
You need to do 8, Mr. Chairman.
That was my fault.
Okay, there's two of them on Booth Road.
It must
Okay.
be,
Item 8,
it must be snowing out.
consideration and making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving expropriation of property for the Booth Road project in Ward 1. Motion by Mr. Latour, second by Ms. Mayo. Discussion. Objection. Hearing none, motion will carry. Item 9, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving a servitude agreement for the North Frontage
Move
Road
on 9.
project in Ward
Second.
4. Motion by Mr. Anderpont, second by Mr. Barris. Mr. Anderpont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief moment to thank Tim and everybody involved in getting to where we are on the North Frontage Road. It's been at least 10 years since we started this project. It was probably monumental over the years once it gets open and gets established, and I can't thank y'all enough because it hadn't been an easy road to get to where we are. That being said, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Anderpont. I echo that sentiment. It's been a lot of hurdles to cross for that project, so thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Number 10, consideration and
Move on
making a
10.
recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving an amendment to the agreement between the police jury and the city of Westlake for the John Stein Road Improvement Project in Ward 4. Motion by Mr. McMillan, second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Mr. McMillan.
Tim, I want to thank you for all your hard work and the money you put into that, also from the parish to make that happen. One of these days, when we get the Coach Williams extension done, and we come down Houston River Road over to Johnstein, it'll be another funnel route that the people from the north up in Moss Bluff will be able to come down, cut across Johnstein, Houston River, go down the Coach Williams extension and get to the south, get to the interstate heading that way. A jaggered north loop, but this is a very important part of that north loop. So Tim, thank you for what you've done on that effort.
Mr. Scott.
Do you mind if I ask what we're actually adjusting and what we're doing now? I remember what we did years ago to get involved in this, but what are we doing? If you don't mind me asking.
Well, the scope of the project has been reduced at the very east end of the project because Sassol's traffic study is going to make, basically going to build the intersection improvements. So we're actually able to reduce the length of the project by about 700 feet. So that takes care of that portion of it. And then also, we're going to be assisting Westlake with some of the funding because of the budget problems that they're having right now. So.
All righty, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion will carry. Item 11, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting an ordinance to establish a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit on Moss Lake Lane in Ward 4. We have a motion by Mr. Barris, second by Mr. Collins. Mr. Guillory.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Barris, I was just wondering, maybe Moss Lake Lane, isn't it a dead end? It's a couple of speed bumps on it already now? No?
No.
Okay, that's another street I'm thinking of. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 12, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to authorizing the parish engineer to advertise for Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2016-08, Pine Cone Drive Extension Project. We have a motion by Mr. White, second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Mr. White.
Do we have any update on the state and the red light being put in at this, for this Pine Cone extension?
Yes, sir, Mr. White. We got an update from DOT today. They're going to be advertising that project in June, and that's about the time we'll probably advertise this project, because we want to make sure that that project is underway before we start this one, because we don't want to lead all those people to that intersection and then there not be a signal there. So it is important that this project work, the Pine Cone Drive extension, that we coordinate those two projects together.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussion? That motion was by Mr. White, and the second was by President Landry. Apologize for that.
That's all right. You don't need to apologize. You don't even have to say mister. You can just say Chris, whatever you want to say.
We have any objection to that motion? Hearing none, that motion will carry. Item 13.
Move on 13.
Consideration of making a recommendation with reference to authorizing the parish engineer to advertise for Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2016-07, I-10 North Frontage Road Construction Project. We have a motion by Mr. Anderpont, second by Mr. Collins. Discussion on that item. Objection. Hearing none, motion carries. Item 14.
So move.
Consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution accepting Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2015-03, overlaying of various roads in Calcasieu Parish as substantially complete. Motion by Mr. Guillory, second by President Landry. Discussion on that item. Objection. That item will pass. 15, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting resolutions accepting the following subdivisions. A, Lakes of Clearfield, Phase 1, Part 4 subdivision. B, Highland Hills, Phase 1 subdivision. C, Oak Grove, Phase 1 subdivision. D, River Trace, Phase 2 subdivision. We have a motion by Mr. Guillory on all items, second by Mr. Collins. Discussion on this item. Any objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry. Number 16, any other matters for consideration? Mr. Barris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to ask staff that in future travel packages include a traffic study and possible parking situation for us when we go, so we know what to drive. Funny guy. Move on 16. Thank you, Mr. President.
Do we have any serious items to consider?
Mr. Latour, move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. We are adjourned.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Tell you what,
It's just approving it.
Might see it.
We should do it tonight and get it over with.
Yeah, I don't mind. Sometimes you just gotta, man, they get on TV.
The chair will entertain a motion to pull
So moved.
item number 13.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Forner, second by Mr. Collins. Bear with me, we'll go to 13. Wait. All right. Number one, take appropriate action and on terms of the following members of various board districts and further adopt resolutions approving appointments and reappointments. A, Miss Joyce Doucette, resignation,
For another
recreation.
30 days?
Second.
We have a motion and a motion by Mr. Latour and a second by Mr. Hunter to appoint.
Defer.
Defer for 30.
Defer for 30?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. All right. We have a motion and a second to defer for 30 days. Any opposition? Motion carries. B, Miss Mary Gallion, MCAL Board of Directors, minority female, Ms. Scott. Mr. Scott deferred for 30 days on March the 10th. He moves to appoint Ms. Lindsay Papillon Godfrey.
Yes, move to appoint Ms. Lindsay Papillon Godfrey.
Motion by Miss Mayo, and second by Mr. Gilry. Is there any opposition? Motion carries. C, Mr. John Legrone, deceased, Gravity Drainage District Number 2, of Ward 7. Mr.
Move to
Barris.
appoint Mr. Steve Smith.
We have a motion on the floor
Second.
by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. McMillan to appoint Mr. Steve Smith. Is there any opposition? Motion carries. D, Mr. Charles Tony Dansby, Health, Gravity Drainage District Number
30 days.
We have a motion to defer for 30 days by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any opposition? Motion carries. E, Mr. Sonny Watkins, Health, Waterworks District
Move
Number
to
7.
defer for 30 days.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Trimmy to defer for 30 days and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there any opposition? Point of personal privilege.
After you finish.
Okay. Good. All right. And F, Miss Ramona Gilbert, retired
Move to
Workforce
appoint Ms.
Development
Carol
Board.
Thibodeau.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Latour to appoint Ms. Carol Thibodeau, second by Ms. Mayo. Is there any opposition to the motion? If not, motion carries. We have a request for point of personal privilege by Mr. Hunter.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add an item for condolences to the family of Miss Debbie Terranova, please.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Hunter and a second by whom? Mr. Latour. Is there any discussion or opposition to the motion? Not motion, Mr.
You can go ahead.
Go ahead. Motion carries. Go ahead, Brian.
Before you adjourn, Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask Ms. Wyvette Pryor Kuzan to come up. She's with Animal Services, just to remind everybody about the upcoming rabies clinic.
Okay, sure.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to take this opportunity to remind you about our annual rabies clinic, which will be held on this upcoming Saturday from 7 o'clock a.m. until noon at the Burton Coliseum complex. So we hope that you all come out and join us and bring your precious pet to be vaccinated for rabies.
Mr. McMillan.
Yeah, just, could you go over the fees? You're gonna have a drive-through. Could you tell folks what they can expect when they get out
The fees for
there?
the spayed or neutered animals are going to be $10. For unaltered animals, it's $8. And we will have microchipping available.
Okay, microchipping's free or add-in?
$12.
$12 for and it's a drive-through, isn't it?
Yes, it's a drive-through clinic, so we try to move everyone through there as fast as possible.
Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While you're up here and while Nathan's in the audience too, I want to thank y'all for the work y'all been doing these past few weeks. I know with the recent floods, y'all been working a lot, not only in Calcasieu Parish, but with our neighbors to the north. I know y'all been working overtime as you always do, but thank you. Especially these past few weeks, I know y'all been going above and beyond. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hunter. We certainly do appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We stand adjourned.